What's good, night owls? Before we dive into the most twisted love story you've ever heard, I need y'all to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what would you do if you fell in love with someone society branded as evil incarnate? Would you burn the world down for them? Or would you walk away? Keep that question in mind, because by the end of this journey through hell, you're gonna need to pick a side. Tonight, we're traveling back to 536 AD, the literal worst year to be alive on this planet. Picture this. The sun basically disappeared for 18 months, crops rotted in fields that looked like nuclear winter, and people were dying so fast they couldn't dig graves quick enough. It was like The Walking Dead, but with actual religious hysteria and zero weapons. This is the story of Lord Moravik and Waila the Untamed. Think Romeo and Juliet, but if Romeo was a 400-year-old vampire and Juliet was a witch who could literally burn you alive with her mind. So grab your favorite drink, turn off the lights, and let's descend into the darkest love story ever told. March 14th, 536 AD. The Austrian countryside. The sun ain't risen proper in 3 months. I'm talking biblical darkness, folks. Summers in Europe became 35 degrees Fahrenheit to 37 degrees Fahrenheit colder, with China even reporting summer snow. The sky looks like God took a massive dump and forgot to flush. Ash and snow falling together like some twisted wedding confetti for the apocalypse. I am Lord Moravik of Holstein, and I've been dead for 124 years now. Turned during the fall of Rome when I was just a stupid soldier boy thinking I could save the empire. Joke's on me, here I am, watching the world end again, and I'm still stuck in this rotting meat suit. But let me tell you something about being a vampire in 536 AD. This ain't your sparkly twilight bullshit. I'm talking about hiding in crypts that smell like 1,000 years of death, drinking rat blood when times get tough, and listening to humans scream about demons every single night. And the screaming has gotten worse since the sky went dark. That's when I first saw her, while everyone else is huddled in their hovels, praying to a god who apparently went on vacation. She's out there in the ash snow, barefoot, gathering herbs like it's a regular Tuesday. Red hair flowing like liquid fire, the only color left in this gray-ass world. The villagers called her cursed, said she talked to demons. But I watched her heal a kid's broken arm with nothing but mud and whispered words. I watched her leave bread outside starving families' doors. I watched her cry over every dead animal she found. This woman was more human than any of those torch-carrying jackasses hunting her. You know what's funny? I'm literally an undead monster, and she's the one they want to burn alive. That's medieval logic for you, kind of like how we cancel people on Twitter today for having different opinions, except with actual fire. June 9th, 536 AD. Her hut in the forest. I'd been watching her for months. Yeah, I know how that sounds, but hear me out. When you're immortal and the world's ending, you don't exactly have a busy social calendar. She's got this ritual she does every evening. Sits in her garden, talks to the plants like they're old friends. Hey there, little Rosemary. Sorry the sun's been a bitch lately. Hang in there, baby. And her laugh? Jesus Christ, her laugh could bring the dead back to life. Which, considering my situation, is saying something. I finally worked up the courage to leave her a gift. 2 rabbits I caught, didn't drink from. I'm not a monster. Okay, I am, but I got standards, and a bottle of wine I'd been saving since Rome fell. Left it at her door with a note. From someone who understands being feared. She kept the rabbits, buried the wine. Message received, buddy. The villagers were losing their minds faster than cryptocurrency values in a bear market. The Irish chronicles record a failure of bread from the years 536 to 539. And when people are starving, they need someone to blame. Guess who's the obvious choice? The weird chick who lives alone and knows too much about healing. I started hearing the talk in the village. Waila cursed the crops. Waila made the sun disappear. Waila probably caused my wife's chronic fatigue syndrome. These people would have blamed her for their erectile dysfunction if they knew what that was. They started planning. Torches, pitchforks, the whole medieval mob starter pack. And I'm thinking, really? The world's literally ending, and this is how you want to spend your time. But I get it. Fear makes people stupid. Always has. Whether it's witch hunts in 536 AD or conspiracy theories in 2025, scared humans are predictable as hell. Every night, I'd follow her through the forest. She'd collect herbs, sing to dying trees, leave offerings for woodland spirits. The woman was out here conducting a one-person environmental protection agency while everyone else was busy hoarding turnips. And the way she moved, like she was dancing with the darkness itself. Sometimes I'd catch her looking over her shoulder, like she could sense me. Those green eyes would scan the tree line, and I'd hold my breath. Not that I needed to breathe, but old habits die hard. One night she stopped walking, turned around, looked directly at my hiding spot. "I know you're there," she said, voice like honey mixed with lightning. "You can keep following me, or you can walk with me. Your choice." I chose to keep hiding, like a coward, because what do you say to perfection? Hey, I'm a blood-sucking undead creature who's been stalking you for months, but I swear I'm one of the good guys. July 4th, 536 AD. The village square. The bishop's holding court like he's running a medieval TED Talk. "The witch must burn for God's glory," he's shouting, while secretly hoarding grain in his basement. Classic religious leader move: create a crisis, blame the outsider, profit. I'm in the crowd, hood up, listening to these idiots plan Waila's murder. And let me tell you, mob mentality in 536 AD hits different than keyboard warriors today. These people were ready to literally burn someone alive based on rumors. "She made my cow sick," one farmer yells. "She looked at my baby funny," screams another. "She exists and I don't like it." Okay, nobody actually said that, but you get the vibe. That's when I realized I had a choice to make. Stay hidden and watch the only light in this dying world get snuffed out, or do something about it. Guess what I chose? Found him in his private chambers, counting his stolen grain like a medieval Jeff Bezos. I didn't even introduce myself. Just grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "You want to talk about demons?" I whispered, letting my fangs show. "Let me show you what a real monster looks like." I drained him dry. And you know what? I didn't feel bad about it. Not for a second. Some people deserve to die, and religious leaders who use fear to control people are at the top of that list. But here's the thing about killing in medieval times: word spreads faster than wildfire. By morning, the whole village knew something unholy had happened. The bishop's body was pale as fresh snow, 2 puncture wounds in his neck, and his grain stores mysteriously empty. I left the grain outside the poorest family's doors. Call it vampire Robin Hood. The villagers went full paranoid mode. Now they're dealing with a witch and a vampire. It's like having COVID and monkeypox at the same time, bad news all around. They started carrying garlic, which, fun fact, doesn't actually work. Wearing crosses, also useless, and praying harder than college students during finals week. But fear was eating them alive faster than I ever could. And through it all, Wayla kept doing her thing. Healing the sick, feeding the hungry, being a literal angel while everyone called her a demon. The cognitive dissonance was thick enough to cut with a knife. That's when I realized I wasn't just attracted to her. I was in love with her. Like Romeo drinking poison in a tomb level in love. And that scared me more than anything I'd faced in 400 years. August 15th, 536 AD. The Sacred Grove. I'm watching her perform some healing ritual for a dying deer. Because of course she'd try to save woodland creatures during the apocalypse. When she suddenly stops, turns around, looks directly at me. Are you going to keep creeping in the shadows? Or are you going to help me save this animal? I stepped into the moonlight, and for the first time in over a century, I felt human. I don't think you want my kind of help, I said. She looked at my pale skin, my two sharp teeth, my eyes that reflected light like a cat's. You're the one who's been leaving gifts. I nodded. You're the one who killed the bishop. I nodded again. Good, she said. He was an asshole. And just like that, I was in love with a woman who approved of my murder spree. If that's not a match made in heaven, I don't know what is. We spent the night talking. She told me about her exile from the church for healing people without permission. I told her about dying in Rome and waking up with an insatiable hunger for blood. She explained her magic, how she could feel the life force in everything, how the dying world was causing her physical pain. The darkness isn't natural, she said. Something's blocking the sun. The earth is crying. Climate historians believe that this major cooling that began in 536 AD occurred because of a massive volcanic eruption, but to her, it felt like the world was mourning. That's when she touched my face. First human contact I'd had in decades that wasn't violent. Her fingers were warm, and for a moment, I felt like I might actually have a soul. No thirst for blood. My heart melted away like an ice cream. You're not a monster, she whispered. You're just broken. And that's when I knew I was completely screwed. We started meeting in secret. Every night, I'd find her in the forest. She'd tell me about her day, which villagers she'd secretly helped, which animals she'd saved, which plants were still fighting to survive. I'd tell her about my hunts, not for humans, mind you, but for the actual monsters hiding in the darkness. See, the thing about apocalyptic times is that they bring out the worst in everyone. Bandits, murderers, rapists. They all thought the end of the world was an excuse to go full savage. I made sure they didn't get the chance. Wayla called me her guardian demon. I called her my saving grace. We were like the world's most dysfunctional power couple, except instead of arguing about whose turn it was to do dishes, we were debating the morality of vigilante justice. She'd patch up my wounds. Vampire healing isn't instant, by the way. And I'd bring her rare herbs from places too dangerous for humans to go. We had our own little economy of care in the middle of hell on earth. I could hear her heartbeat from miles away, a slow, thoughtful rhythm, like a moth tapping. We were inseparable. I look forward for our meeting each time like a child looked towards Christmas. I feel like a teenager again. I showed her how fast I can. She would smile, and it melts my heart each time she does because it is something she rarely does. Daily activities became meeting my lovely Wayla, who I was dying to confess my undying love to. I believe she knows, but the cruel world won't let our love last. I've slit the throats of kings. I've watched empires collapse in slow, glorious agony. I've lived long enough to forget my own mother's face. And yet I remember the way she laughed. My Wayla. She didn't cast a spell on me that night. No circles. No charms. She just existed. And that did something to me. I'd wandered into her woods thinking I might feed, or at least pretend I didn't need to. But instead, I ended up running after a squirrel because she told me it was cursed. Cursed. I hadn't laughed in years. My lungs didn't remember how. But there I was chasing a rabid rodent under the moon while my boots walked off without me. She hexed them, and they hexed my pride. Gods, she was wicked. We danced. Not the waltzes of old courts, no. This wasn't Vienna or Paris or any place where marble columns watched. This was raw earth. She moved like the wind envied her freedom. I stepped on her foot once, and she cackled so hard. A vine sprouted up and tied my wrist to a birch tree. I could have broken it, of course. I didn't. That was the game. Her magic against my restraint. And I let her win. We rolled in the moss like we were young. I'd forgotten what moss felt like. I'd forgotten what tenderness was. When she kissed me, she didn't flinch at my fangs. When I kissed her back, I didn't need blood. I only needed her. That night, I laid beside her while if the sun flirted with the horizon, I wouldn't care. I'd burned before, but I'd never wanted to. Her skin was warm, not just warm, alive. She traced my chest like it held secrets instead of sins. And I whispered in the old tongue, not to seduce, but to remember what it meant to be seen. I told her, if the dawn takes you, I'll bury myself in your laugh, because it was the first sound in centuries that didn't echo like regret. And when she finally fell asleep, lips parted, lashes like spell threads on her cheeks, I didn't guard her out of duty. I guarded her like a starving man guards a flame in winter, afraid it might go out, afraid it might change him. And it did, just a little, enough that I feared the morning, enough that I stayed anyway. But paradise never lasts. The villagers were getting more desperate. Food was running out, people were dying, and they needed someone to blame. The mysterious vampire killings had them spooked, but Wayla was still their primary target. I started finding signs around the forest. Crude drawings of women burning. Messages carved into trees. Death to the witch. Purify the land. Make the sun return. It was like watching a Twitter mob organize, except instead of trying to get someone fired, they were literally planning to burn her alive. I begged her to run. Leave the village, come away with me. We could find somewhere safe, wait out the apocalypse together. But she wouldn't abandon the people who needed her. Even the people who wanted her dead. That's not who I am, she said. I can't save myself by letting others suffer. That's when I knew she was too good for this world. And too good for me. October 31st, 536 AD. Halloween, though they didn't call it that yet. A child died. Little Maria, maybe 8 years old, wasted away from the famine. Her parents were insane with grief, and grief makes people do terrible things. They claimed Wayla had cursed the child. Said they saw her casting spells near their house. In reality, she'd been leaving food for the family. But truth doesn't matter when you're looking for someone to blame. The father started rallying the village. "The witch killed my daughter. She must burn." And people listened, because when you're scared and hungry and watching your world die, you'll believe anything that gives you a target for your rage. I watched from the shadows as they planned. Torches, rope, a stake in the village square. They were going full medieval justice on the one person who'd been trying to help them. I had to make a choice: save the woman I loved, or let her die to protect my secret. November 1st, 536 AD. The village square. They dragged her from her hut at dawn. Hands bound, dress torn, but her head held high. Even facing death, Wayla looked like a queen. The new bishop, they'd found a replacement for the one I'd killed, was giving a whole speech about cleansing the land. Burn the witch, and God will return the sun. Yeah, because murdering an innocent woman is definitely going to fix a volcanic winter. These people had the collective IQ of a medieval Facebook comment section. But Wayla, she wasn't begging, wasn't crying. She was looking at each face in the crowd with something that looked like pity. "I forgive you," she said. "All of you. You're afraid, and fear makes people cruel. But this won't bring back the sun. This won't save your children. This will only add more darkness to the world." That's when I snapped. I came out of the shadows like the angel of death himself. First, I took out the guards. Quick, clean, efficient. Then the bishop. And let me tell you, religious leaders taste terrible. Too much guilt and hypocrisy in the blood. The crowd scattered like roaches when you turn on the lights, but I was faster. I hunted them through the streets, through their homes, through their churches. Anyone who'd participated in this witch hunt was fair game. I painted the village red. Literally. Blood on the walls, blood in the streets, blood in the holy water. I became the monster they'd always said I was. And through it all, Wayla was screaming. Not for herself, for them. For the people who'd tried to kill her. "Stop!" she cried. "Please stop. This isn't justice." But I couldn't stop. The rage was too pure, too perfect. These people had tried to destroy the only good thing left in this dying world. When the killing was done, I cut her free. Blood-soaked and exhausted, I fell to my knees in front of her. "I saved you," I whispered. "I saved you." She looked at me with horror. Not fear, she'd never been afraid of me, but horror at what I'd become. "You didn't save me," she said. "You damned yourself." And that's when I realized the truth. I'd become everything she stood against. Violence, revenge, the cycle of hatred that was destroying the world. She could have run, could have thanked me and escaped into the forest. Instead, she knelt beside me in the blood-soaked square. "I can't love a monster," she said, "but I can love the man who's lost inside one." That's when the real tragedy began. See, there's a rule in vampire lore that most people don't know. When you turn someone, you're bound to them forever. Master and servant, maker and child. It's not romantic, it's slavery. But there's another rule. If a vampire's true love dies, the vampire dies too. Not physically, but spiritually. They become something worse than undead. They become empty. Wayla knew this. She'd studied the old texts, understood the supernatural laws better than I did. "The village needs to be rebuilt," she said. "The people need to heal. But as long as you're here, as long as I'm here, they'll never move past this night." I knew what she was saying, what she was asking. "There has to be another way," I begged. She smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. There is. But you're not going to like it. What happened next was the most beautiful and terrible thing I've ever witnessed. Wayla began to glow. Not metaphorically, literally. Her skin became luminous. Her hair turned to liquid fire. Her eyes blazed like stars. She was calling upon every bit of power she'd ever possessed. "I can break the curse," she said, "but it will cost everything." She was going to sacrifice herself to make me human again, to give me back my soul, my mortality, my chance at redemption. "I won't let you die for me," I said. "I'm not dying for you," she replied. "I'm dying for everyone, for the villages that need rebuilding, for the children who need to grow up in a world without monsters, for the future that can't exist as long as this darkness remains." That's when I understood. This wasn't just about us. It was about breaking the cycle of violence, of revenge, of hatred that had been consuming the world. The ritual was agony. Light poured from her body into mine. I felt my fangs retracting, my superhuman strength fading, my dead heart struggling to beat again. But more than that, I felt human emotions, guilt, remorse, the weight of every life I'd taken. And as I became more human, she became less. Her light was fading, her breath growing shallow. "I love you," I whispered. "I know," she said. "That's why this will work." She died in my arms as the sun rose for the first time in months. Real sunlight, not the pale glow we'd been living under. Her sacrifice had somehow lifted the curse from the land as well as from me. I buried her in the sacred grove where we'd first truly met. The villagers found me there 3 days later. Human now, mortal, grieving. They expected me to be angry, to seek revenge for what they'd tried to do to her. Instead, I helped them rebuild. Used my knowledge of warfare to protect them from bandits. Used my centuries of experience to help them survive the continuing famine. I lived for another 40 years after that. Married a kind woman, had children, grew old and died like humans do. But I never forgot Wayla, never stopped loving her. And every year, on the anniversary of her death, red flowers bloomed in the grove where she lay. Flowers that shouldn't have been able to grow in that soil, in that climate. The villagers called them witch roses and said they were a sign of her forgiveness. Now, 1,500 years later, I'm telling you this story. Because here's the thing about love, real love. Not the bullshit Hollywood version. It doesn't conquer all. It doesn't fix everything. Sometimes it destroys you. Sometimes it saves you. And sometimes it transforms you into something better than you were. Wayla and I, we weren't Romeo and Juliet. We were something deeper. Something that transcended death and damnation and the end of the world itself. So I'm asking you again, what would you do? If you loved someone society called evil, would you fight for them? If you were the monster everyone feared, would you choose redemption? If you had to sacrifice everything to save the world, would you do it? Because those choices, they're not medieval. They're not ancient history. They're happening right now in 2025, in your life, in your relationships, in your world. The monsters today don't have fangs. They have keyboards. The witches today don't cast spells. They speak truth to power. The villages today don't burn people at stakes. They cancel them online. But the choice remains the same. Will you choose love over fear? Will you choose understanding over hatred? Will you choose sacrifice over selfishness? Wayla chose love, even when it cost her everything. What will you choose? And that's the story of Lord Moravik and Wayla the Untamed. Minutes of medieval passion, supernatural horror, and the kind of love that literally changes the world. If this story hit you in the feels, smash that like button. If you think you would have made different choices, let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories from history's darkest corners, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Remember, every love story is a horror story if you dig deep enough. And every horror story is a love story if you look at it right. Until next time, keep your hearts open and your stakes sharp. You never know when you might need either one. I'm your host, and this has been Blood and Brimstone. Stay dark, stay dangerous, and stay human.